Bill C-8 can hand the government secret, warrantless powers over Canadians' communications. This is a serious setback for privacy. It's also a serious setback for democracy. With no requirement for privacy impact assessments before these laws or regulations are passed, and with the serious implications that they have on Canadians' privacy, isn't Parliament simply being asked to grant sweeping powers of surveillance to the government without a formal review?
In fact, privacy impact assessment is something that Treasury Board directive requires government departments to do, but it's not a legal obligation in the Privacy Act. And this is one of the recommendations that I have made to Parliament, and I continue to make. It should be an obligation. There should be the opportunity for my office to give input before the fact when there's a major change, including legislation. So it's something to manage. There's cabinet confidences to be considered, but I would agree that that opportunity would be important.
And so you haven't had that opportunity with Bill C-8 and Bill C-2?
We're not consulted on the specific pieces of legislation before they're tabled. We have exchanges often after with officials, and they're good exchanges, but I think earlier consultation would make our feedback more meaningful, and our feedback would happen before it's tabled.
To continue to preempt your appearance on Bill C-8 at another committee, do you have a particular amendment or guardrail that you'd like to see included in that bill before it comes out of committee?
Not specifically at this stage, but I'll just repeat. Necessity and proportionality, strict criteria for the exercise of powers, and appropriate transparency and reporting mechanisms. These are the things that we're looking for.
Okay. There have been a pretty broad chorus of voices that are concerned about the sweeping and secret powers that cabinet ministers would have over the internet access and telephone access for individual Canadians, the power to secret powers to seize private data without warrant and conceal those actions from the public. So would secret orders to disable an individual's telecommunications access be inconsistent with the principles of the Privacy Act, and if so, why, sir?
Thank you for the question. So in the last Parliament, I appeared on Bill C-26 and talked about some of these issues when legislation aims at giving more power to the state to protect infrastructure and to disable and to take certain steps. And as Commissioner, I've always stated that privacy is not an obstacle to public interest. It's not an obstacle. We needed to put in the legislation a criterion on necessity and proportionality, making sure that the exercise of those powers is going to be tested from a privacy perspective to say, is this necessary? Does it achieve the result for which it's been put in place? And is it proportional? So that's the substantive element. And you mentioned secrecy. In certain instances, secrecy is necessary, but it should be challenged, and there should be ways for some reports to be made to appropriate authorities. It doesn't have to be necessarily to make it public, but reports to my office, reports to a national committee of parliamentarians, or other means.
And so in your review of this proposed legislation, does it check all of those boxes?
Well, I will be waiting to testify on C-8 when called, and we're reviewing that very carefully. But there is more to be done in terms of the reporting mechanism and the necessity and proportionality.
I would say for sure that there's more to be done. This bill proposes to let the government secretly cut a Canadian's phone or internet service. The cabinet minister would have the power to issue the order, would prohibit that the existence of the order to cut that service, which would, of course, eliminate the ability for anyone, including you in your role as commissioner, have any oversight whatsoever. Isn't this a direct circumvention of the act over which your mandate is concerned?
Well, that's why, again, to make sure that we're not making it more difficult to raise rights and to protect privacy, reporting to appropriate authority, even if done in a confidential manner, is something that I recommend. Making sure that there is ability for my office to be aware of it, to be able to raise questions. In some instances, a report to Parliament is appropriate. A report to committee is appropriate. And so this should be part of the discussion and the assessment to say, what type of reporting is there? Is it enough? But certainly, in my view, there should be confidential reporting to some authority who would be able to raise questions about it.
Currently, that doesn't exist in the legislation. What you're describing, what you describe as essential, is not included in the legislation. Bill C-8 lets a minister compel data without judicial oversight. So this also creates a risk of a parallel system where Canadians' personal information, their personal data, can be seized in secret, again, with no redress by individual Canadians or by your office. Isn't this antithetical to the type of system that your office has been designed to protect?
Well, if my office is not aware of something happening, of course, we can't raise questions about it. We can't assist Canadians. And so I think, again, there will be instances where making something known to the public may not be appropriate, but we should challenge a claim to absolute secrecy. We should make sure that there's appropriate reporting to the appropriate authorities and that there is an appropriate means to raise questions.
Right. Of course, if your office doesn't know that the law is being broken, then I guess the government's contention is that they haven't broken the law. Do you think that a vague standard like, quote, any threat, which is the term used in the legislation, undermines safeguards in the Privacy Act, such as the requirement that collection or use must be necessary, proportionate, and authorized by law?
Well, we've advocated in the past, and as I say, I expect to be called specifically on this bill to address it, but as a general proposition, I recommend a necessity and proportionality to be in the legislation, made explicit, so that there's a strong test.